Cedar Point is home to one of the best roller coaster collections in the world. Despite no longer holding the title as park with the most roller coasters, Cedar Point still offers 16 operating roller coasters as of 2023. I was able to visit Cedar Point in May this year and was able to obtain rides on every roller coaster in the park aside from Wilderness Run. With the amount of quality roller coasters and polarizing opinions on some of them, I thought it would be fun to sit down and rank them from worst to best. After looking back at my rides, here is how I rank them. Before we proceed, 99% of those who watch my videos, much like every other channel, are not subscribed, and I encourage you to drop a like or subscription if you do like the video. There will be a lot more content coming in the future that I would not want you to miss. Now on to the rankings. Coming in at number 16 is Wilderness Run, which is an Intamin children's roller coaster with an incredible top speed of 6 miles per hour and a towering height of 19 feet. This almost took my number 1 spot, but unfortunately finds itself in last place. Nothing much to say about this ride overall. It's a ride for children, and I did get to ride it for the credit as a 10-year-old and found it boring just like any other typical 10-year-old would. Coming in at number 15 and 1 spot ahead is the Vekoma Junior Coaster Woodstock Express. Much like Wilderness Run, there is not much to go over. This is basically a family coaster that is a step up from Wilderness Run, offering a height of 42 feet and top speed of 29 miles per hour. These Vekoma Junior coasters are great for those working their way up the roller coaster food chain and provide mild thrills for everyone who rides. Moving on to some bigger roller coasters, now at 14 is Corkscrew. Despite its historical significance as the first aero coaster with a vertical loop and first 3-inversion roller coaster in 1976, this is my least favorite of the aero corkscrews. I found it rough compared to other corkscrews and think it has overstayed its welcome despite its prominent location at the park. Cedar Point should find a better replacement to occupy the prime midway space that Corkscrew sits on. Sticking with the aero roller coasters, at number 13 is Iron Dragon. Cedar Point's aero suspended coaster occupies the number 13 spot for me. I really like the setting of this ride as it traverses through the trees and above the water. However, the ride crawls through its layout compared to other aero suspended coasters like the Bat at Kings Island. Much like Corkscrew, I think this is another roller coaster that is in the twilight of its operating life and should be removed for another attraction. It seems more people are riding this to see Top Thrill 2 construction progress than the actual ride experience itself. At number 12 is the new for 2023 roller coaster Wild Mouse. Since this is a spinning roller coaster, I like to always bring up the fact that I am not a fan of spinning, which means I tend to have a negative bias towards these kind of rides and usually rank them lower than other people. Despite that, I think this kind of ride was needed for Cedar Point, and it was drawing very long lines when I was there, which they will be happy with. As far as the ride is concerned, it's your typical Wild Mouse with shallow drops, bank turns, and hairpin turns while spinning. The unfortunate part is the ride has not been the most reliable, and hopefully that's not foreshadowing what's to come for Zamperla and Top Thrill 2 when that opens in 2024. We go back to the aero roller coasters at number 11 with Cedar Creek Mine Ride. The aero run continues with another one of Cedar Point's aero roller coasters. Cedar Creek Mine Ride is the ugly stepchild of Frontier Town, having to share the back of the park with 2 world-class roller coasters that will be discussed later in this video. Mine trains are fun little rides, but usually are catered more towards families, and this one spares no exception. Shallow drops and long bank turns make up the majority of the ride's layout, but I do like the roller coaster setting on the water. Unlike some of the other roller coasters I discussed earlier, this one still runs very well for its age and actually had a 45-minute wait on my trip to Cedar Point, indicating it still had some popularity among the public. On to number 10 now with Cedar Point's oldest roller coaster, Blue Streak. Despite only being number 10 at the park, I was pleasantly surprised with the rides I got on Blue Streak in my May visit to Cedar Point. The ride was running a little rough, but I was surprised overall by how it ran for a roller coaster that opened in 1964. The out and back layout was filled with a lot of decent floater airtime despite only hitting 40 miles per hour with the 72-foot drop. Due to that, it's in the ride at least once territory when in the past it would have been on my skippable roller coaster list. At number 9 is yet another aero roller coaster. This is Gemini. Gemini is Cedar Point's dueling aero coaster. This is pretty much a beefed up mine train but offers a lot of good airtime and speed throughout the ride. If you like good pacing, this ride doesn't have it as there are a lot of slow turning transitions in between drops, but if you like a good old school ride that everybody will enjoy that's packed with airtime, you cannot go wrong with Gemini. I do like that Cedar Point tries to run both sides as much as it can, as the dueling element adds to the ride experience, and both sides were running on my visit to the park. This is always the ride that is rumored to be removed next at the park, but it has great capacity and offers a great intense family ride, so I wouldn't mind if they kept it around for a while. Coming in at number 8 on my rankings is the first Cedar Point B&M. This is Gatekeeper. This roller coaster is the first of many coming up on the list that people will rank very differently based on preference. Don't get me wrong, the B&M Wing Coaster is sometimes not the most intense model in the world, but for every Gatekeeper at Wild Eagle, you do get some good ones like X-Flight and Thunderbird. I think this roller coaster is great for what it is, and that's offering a smooth and graceful layout with great near-miss elements and decent positive Gs with a phenomenal setting at the front of the park. Even if some of the elements like the airtime hill completely whiff, I still enjoy this ride overall and look forward to getting on it when I visit the park. At number 7, we have our first roller coaster named after a Pokemon, and that's Rougarou, the B&M floorless coaster. While I totally understand the hate for Gatekeeper, I got off my rides on Rougarou confused on the hatred for it. I think it's a well-rounded floorless coaster that still runs great for its age and has some great intense elements. This is simply another roller coaster that gets extra criticism based on the park it is located in. Although the name gets criticized a lot, and that I absolutely get. Like I said before, it sounds like something you would name a Pokemon. With only 4 inversions, there are better floorless rides out there as well, but this one still packs a punch. Coming in at number 6, and this one really hurts a lot, but it's Magnum XL 200. Prior to my 2023 visit, Magnum was my number 2 roller coaster at Cedar Point, and unfortunately, due to my last rides, it has taken a tragic tumble down my rankings. Perhaps it's due to my older age and increased sensitivity to rough rides, but I got off the ride disappointed with how it went. The ending finale was still great as always, and the layout traversing onto the beach and coming back was great as well, but I found the ride up to that point underwhelming compared to my past rides. If you are able to tolerate the roughness and the imperfections, I understand how this ride is ranked highly for some people, and I'm hoping in the future this ride can redeem itself as it holds a soft spot in my heart, as it was the first 200-foot roller coaster I rode, but I think age has just caught up to it unfortunately. Coming in at number 5 is the other roller coaster named after a Pokemon, that's Valraven, the B&M Dive Coaster. Another one of Cedar Point's roller coaster and roller coaster types in the Mixed Reception Club, Valraven was one, however, that exceeded my expectations. The ride was running well and flew through the layout for me, and I found the first drop and drop off the brakes very good, and the inversions were fun. Not as intense as I would have wanted, but fun. Like Gatekeeper, there is an airtime hill that does nothing, but I found the ride satisfying for the most part, and any ride that's satisfying and contains a 214-foot vertical drop will rank highly for me. I do wish the ride was a little longer though, as I think Cedar Point easily had the capacity to do that. Having ridden Emperor at SeaWorld San Diego, I did enjoy that one better despite the lower height, as the lack of mid-course brakes made the pacing a little better. Moving on to number 4, where the B&M run continues. This is Raptor, the B&M invert. Although Magnum XL 200 did not stand the test of time for me, Raptor absolutely did. Although it's on the larger side of B&M inverts, it still offers the intensity, pacing, and whip that make the smaller scale inverts great. I also love how the first half of the ride is larger with more drawn out elements before the ride gets lower to the ground and picks the pace up after the mid-course breaks. Speaking of the mid-course breaks, they were off on my visit, which made the second half of this ride an absolute riot, especially the Helix finale before the final breaks. This was my number 1 invert coming in and easily retained its spot for me. Coming in at number 3 is Millennium Force. Occupying the number 3 spot for me is perhaps the most polarizing roller coaster in the world. People define intensity in different ways, but I always include sustained high speeds in my definition. And this ride offers that at 90 miles per hour, especially with how low to the ground it gets. The first drop, as with most Gigas, feels like it's going on forever, and I actually grayed out at the bottom of it in the back row on one of my rides. Yes, the airtime hills, elements, and layout may not be as good as other rides, but the overbanked turns are still pretty powerful, and flying at 90 miles per hour low to the ground through banked turns and tunnels is such a rush, especially with the T-bar restraint. Add on a long ride time and a cool station flyby, and Millennium Force is still elite to me. I've brought it up before that so many people think this ride is overrated now that it has become underrated, and I still believe that after my rides this year. Coming in as the park runner-up is Maverick. The roller coaster that showed you do not have to be tall to be elite takes the number 2 spot. The layout and elements of this ride are something special, offering absurdly intense laterals, ejector airtime, inversions, and a launch on top of all of that. I remember getting to ride this in its opening year, thinking it was going to be nothing special and being absolutely blown away. This ride is just relentless, and the 2 overbanked turns after the launch are some of my favorite ride moments on any roller coaster. This ride consistently pulls the longest lines at Cedar Point, and for good reason, and it's not just the lack of capacity. I can only imagine how insane this would be with just lap bars instead of over the shoulder restraints. But with how intense those banked turns are, they are there for a reason. And finally, at number 1, and my number 1 roller coaster out of any I've ridden, it should be no surprise it's Steel Vengeance. In my opinion, there is one thing that separates elite roller coasters from good roller coasters, and that is being able to elicit strong reactions. Those could include laughter, the sense of not knowing what is going on, or complete shock after the ride hits the final brakes. This roller coaster managed to elicit all 3 of those strong reactions. I had ridden quite a few RMCs before I rode Steel Vengeance and thought I had an idea of how this would ride, and those were blown out of the water. This ride, to put it simply, is basically what happens when RMC asks what you want on your roller coaster and what you want it to look like, and you just say yes. Insane first drop, outer bank hills that keep you out of your seat the entire time, strong whippy inversions, ejector airtime everywhere, even on the inclines, banked airtime hills, near miss elements, insane pacing that feels like it's getting faster as the ride progresses. This ride is relentless and exhausting, but in the best way, and it's always funny to hear people's reactions when riding it. There is a reason it's my number 1, and I would say the list of rides that could possibly be better is pretty short. So there it is, my Cedar Point roller coaster rankings from number 16 all the way to number 1. Do you agree with how I rank them or disagree? Let me know in the comments either way. And if you made it this far, I encourage you to drop a sub and like the video, as that will help this channel grow. There is a lot more content coming up as I have gotten to a lot more parks lately, and I would hate for you to miss it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.